The message arrived while I was helping customers in my boutique. You're leaving me. I'm moving to New York with my 21-year-old girlfriend. I already emptied our joint account. My hand remained steady as I read it. My voice didn't tremble as I helped Mrs. Timothy choose a scarf. The only sign that my husband of 13 years had just ended our marriage via text message was a slight tightening around my eyes. I waited until Mrs. Timothy left with her purchase wrapped in our signature silver paper before typing my reply. Good luck. My name is Kelly. I'm 39 years old. And today I received the coldest goodbye message in history. But while Adam was probably feeling proud of his dramatic exit, thinking I'd be crying over his betrayal, I calmly closed my boutique for the day. The signs had been there for months. The long work nights that didn't match his salary. The sudden password changes on his phone. The way he started going to the gym all the time. The new clothes. The desperate attempt to feel young again. Months ago, I found a receipt for dinner for two at a fancy restaurant on a night he told me he'd be working late. That same night, I opened a separate bank account at a different bank. A week later, when he casually suggested we combine our finances so they would be easier to manage, I smiled and agreed. Meanwhile, I quietly transferred my personal savings to my new account. The joint account he'd just emptied had just enough money in it to avoid suspicion. Approximately 3 months of regular deposits. The rest was safe in my account, along with a detailed record of every suspicious transaction he'd made over the past year. My phone buzzed again. Don't bother begging. Lauren and I are leaving tomorrow. I'll send someone for my things later. Lauren, the new receptionist at his office. I'd met her at the company Christmas party. I'd watched her laugh a little too hard at Adam's jokes, touch his arm when she thought no one was looking. She was young enough to be his daughter, naive enough to think she was special. I didn't reply to his message. Instead, I called my lawyer. We'd spoken 2 months ago when I saw the hotel charges on our credit card. It's time, I told her. He just made his move. The papers are ready, she replied. I'll file them first thing tomorrow. Do you want us to serve him in New York? No rush. Let him think he's won. Another message from Adam. I know this must be hard for you. After all, you're not getting any younger. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy. My little shop. The successful boutique I'd built from the ground up. The one that generated more money than his mediocre management job. The same one whose profits I had wisely kept separate from our shared finances. I smiled, thinking of the legal papers that would be waiting for him in New York. Let him enjoy his little victory while he can. That night, I stayed at his house. No, my house. The one I'd inherited from my grandmother. The one I never put in his name, despite his constant hints over the years. Another smart decision. While gathering paperwork for my lawyer, I found our wedding album. Adam looked so different back then, before his midlife crisis turned him into a caricature. Now he wore shirts too tight for his thickening waist, tried too hard to fit in with the young people at work, spoke in slang that sounded ridiculous coming from a 46-year-old man. My phone kept buzzing. More text messages, each one more arrogant than the last. I've been planning this for months. Lauren is everything you're not. Maybe you'll find someone your own age. Already told my family. They agree we need some distance. Actually, this is no one's fault. I took screenshots of every message and saved them in my evidence folder. Let him keep talking. My lawyer would love these. His confession that it was all planned. His boasting about emptying our account. But then one last message caught my eye. By the way, I used the joint card to book our flights and the hotel. Consider it my parting gift. Oh, perfect. I dialed the credit card company. This is Mrs. Walter. I need to report fraud and cancel a card immediately. Of course, ma'am. Can you tell me which charges? 3 first-class tickets to New York booked today. A stay at the Royal Palm. And I need to remove my husband as an authorized user. Understood. Do you have proof of the fraud? Text messages from my husband admitting he used our joint card to pay for a trip with his girlfriend after emptying our joint bank account. I can forward them to you. The woman on the phone maintained a professional tone, but I could detect a slight hint of satisfaction as she canceled the charges. Tomorrow, Adam and Lauren would arrive at the airport only to discover their tickets were worthless. Their hotel reservation gone. The phone buzzed again. Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller. I actually laughed out loud. He thought he had a claim to my grandmother's house? His ego had grown so inflated he'd forgotten whose name was on the deed. Another message. I know the shop means a lot to you. We can agree on a fair price for your half. My half? Of my business? The one I built? The one I financed while he complained about my long hours? The one he called my hobby? I poured myself a glass of wine. The good stuff. The one I'd been saving for a special occasion. This counted. Tomorrow, Adam would receive a lesson on separate property and marital assets. But tonight, I would enjoy the quiet and start planning my next chapter. The next morning, my phone lit up with furious messages. What the hell did you do to our credit card? The airline won't let us on. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me. I put my phone on silent and headed to my boutique. Wednesdays were always busy, and I had a new shipment of designer handbags to unpack. Life goes on, even when your husband runs off with a receptionist young enough to be his daughter. Around noon my phone rang. It was Adam's mom. Kelly dear, Adam told us everything. How controlling you've been. How you pushed him away. And now he says you're being spiteful and ruining his travel plans. I put her on speakerphone as I rearranged the window display. Did he also tell you he emptied our joint account? Or that he used our credit card to buy tickets for him and his girlfriend? Silence. Then a sigh. Well, he said you left him no choice. That you've been cold and distant. Kimberly, I have all his text messages. Do you want me to read you the one where he brags about stealing my money? Or the one where he mocks my age? Another pause. That does sound a bit harsh. I told him that text message was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, Kimberly. You've always been nice to me. But I think it's best to leave this conversation here. My lawyer had recommended minimal contact with Adam and his family during the divorce proceedings. Divorce is already goodbye enough. By the afternoon, Adam's sister, Emily, was spreading the latest family gossip. Apparently, Adam and Lauren were stranded at a budget motel near the airport. Their New York dreams on hold. He tried to use his personal credit cards, but they were maxed out. Another red flag I'd noted months ago. Then my lawyer called. The emergency hearing is scheduled for Saturday. Given his confession about emptying the account and the credit card fraud, we have a strong case to freeze his remaining assets. Has he been served yet? Not yet, but we'll be sending the papers to his new address at the motel. She chuckled before adding, by the way, his girlfriend's social media is giving us a lot of evidence. She's been posting all day about their adventure, including some not-so-nice comments about you. I smiled, thinking of my own collection of evidence. A year of suspicious charges. Hotel receipts. Text messages. Proof that this had all been planned. Adam was so focused on his grand escape that he'd never considered I might be watching. Waiting. Preparing. Then another text arrived. You think you're so clever. But I made copies of all the boutique's financial records. Half that business is mine. I forwarded the message to my lawyer, adding it to the growing file of Adam's mistakes. Let him learn the hard way what separate property and business ownership mean. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. The Saturday emergency hearing would be everything. Adam entered the courtroom looking exactly as I expected, dressed like a man desperately clinging to his youth, his designer jeans too tight, his blazer screaming midlife crisis. Lauren waited outside, her young face looking even younger under the harsh courthouse lights. Inside, my lawyer calmly presented our evidence piece by piece. Adam's text messages where he boasted about emptying our joint account. Proof of his credit card fraud. Months of hidden expenses, all meticulously documented. Your Honor, Adam's lawyer began, my client admits to making some poor decisions. But Mrs. Walter has been vindictive and calculating. My lawyer didn't even blink. Calculating? Smart. My client protected her separate assets and kept records of her husband's suspicious behavior. That's not vindictive. That's simply good business. The judge reviewed the documents. The deed to my house, proving it was separate property. The boutique's corporate paperwork, where my name was the only one listed. The clear separation of personal and business finances. The same separation Adam had always called unnecessary. Then the judge looked up and directly at Adam. Mr. Walter, you admitted in a text message that you emptied a joint account, and used shared credit cards to pay for a trip with your girlfriend. Do you deny this? Adam shifted uncomfortably. I was just trying to make a clean break. By committing financial fraud? The judge raised an eyebrow. And now you're claiming ownership of property that's clearly separate from the marriage? Adam's lawyer tried again. Your Honor, the business grew during the marriage. My client is entitled to a portion. My lawyer jumped in without hesitation. The business was started before the marriage, and Mrs. Walter always kept it separate. We have records of every dollar earned and invested. I watched as the reality finally hit Adam. He thought this would be easy. Empty the accounts. Run off with his girlfriend. Claim half my business. He never understood why I insisted on keeping things separate. Mocked me for being cautious. Now that same caution was saving me. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct. The judge ruled. All shared assets are frozen until the divorce is finalized. He turned to Adam. Mr. Walter, you are ordered to return any money taken from the joint accounts within 24 hours. Adam panicked. But the money's gone. We spent it. The judge cut him off coldly. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it. Silence. Then the judge added, and Mr. Walter, the court does not look kindly upon the use of shared credit cards to pay for vacations with your mistress. Outside the courthouse, I took a deep breath. This was just the beginning. As I walked away, I heard Lauren asking Adam about their trip to New York, but her question faded behind the confident click of my heels on the marble floor. I was already moving on, heading back to the business he'd never understood or respected. The following weeks, Adam grew more desperate. First, he claimed the boutique had been his idea. Then, he suddenly remembered investing money in the beginning. He even went so far as to insist he'd always been my business partner. Each lie was swiftly refuted by my detailed records. He's running out of options, my lawyer pointed out. And she was right. One day, Lauren posted something on social media. Staying in his tiny apartment, she wrote. Turns out living on a receptionist's salary isn't as glamorous as I'd hoped. Shortly after, his family started contacting me. At first, they blamed me for everything. But now their tone had shifted. I had no idea, his sister, Emily, admitted. He told us you were cold and controlling. That he needed to escape. She paused before continuing. But then we saw his text messages. The way he bragged about stealing your money. That's not the brother I thought I knew. Even his mother called again, this time in tears. The things he said about your age. About replacing you. Her voice trembled. I raised him better than that. At least I thought I did. I let all their calls go to voicemail. Weeks ago their support might have mattered. Now it just felt like a bunch of rats fleeing a sinking ship. Meanwhile, the boutique thrived. Ironically, the gossip surrounding my situation had brought in more customers. Women would come in just to show their support, often leaving with more than they planned to buy. My ex tried the same thing. A customer confided in me as she purchased a designer handbag. He thought he could take everything in the divorce. She smiled. Men like that never occurred to it that we might just be smarter than them. Adam still sent messages. His texts ranged from fury to manipulation. You ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. You'll regret being so vindictive. Can't we fix this? That business wouldn't be anything without my support. I didn't reply. Just forwarded every message to my lawyer. Let him dig himself deeper. I heard Lauren was having doubts. Living in a cramped, no-frills studio apartment with a middle-aged man who couldn't even afford his own place wasn't the romantic adventure she'd envisioned. The age gap that once felt thrilling during secret hotel rendezvous now seemed very different under the harsh light of reality. She's been posting about toxic relationships and learning from mistakes, my lawyer mentioned during a status call. And this morning she removed her relationship status. I almost felt sorry for Adam. But then I remembered the LOL in his message after emptying our joint account. The casual cruelty of his comments about my age. The way he assumed I'd be helpless without him. Instead of pity, I felt pride. Pride in my foresight. Pride in my quiet strength. Pride in how I protected myself while he underestimated me. The final divorce hearing. This wasn't the victory lap Adam had imagined. His cocky swagger was gone, replaced by pure panic. Lauren was nowhere in sight. According to office gossip, she'd already moved in with a coworker her own age. Adam showed up in his old clothes. Apparently, his designer wardrobe had been returned to help pay back what he'd stolen. His lawyer looked exhausted, probably from searching and failing to find any loopholes in my careful separation of assets. Your Honor, Adam's lawyer tried one last time. Despite the separate property paperwork, my client contributed to the success of his wife's business through moral support. My lawyer didn't even flinch. Moral support, she repeated, flipping through some papers. You mean these text messages where he calls her boutique a little shop with no future? Or these social media posts where he mocks her by calling it a mere hobby? The judge had heard enough. The final decree. I kept my house. I kept my business. I kept all my separate property. Adam kept his personal belongings and his car, which was worth less than what he still owed. As he left the courthouse, he leaned toward me and hissed, "You've destroyed me. I have to move back in with my parents." I looked him in the eye. No, Adam. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure of it. And with that, he was moving back in with his parents while I continued to run my successful business. Adam glared at me. You planned this all along. You knew this was going to happen. I shrugged. I just paid attention. Unlike you, I understood the value of keeping good records. His mother stepped between us. Enough, Adam. You've embarrassed yourself enough already. Then she turned and walked away. Her son trailed close behind. Just before they got in the car, I overheard her say, "What were you thinking? A 21-year-old? Emptying bank accounts? Sending those horrible text messages?" I watched them disappear into the parking lot, feeling nothing but relief. Adam thought he was writing the ending of my story with that cruel text message. Instead, he just set in motion my carefully calculated plans. My phone buzzed. It wasn't Adam. It was notifications of new orders on my boutique's website. Life was moving on, but not in the direction he'd imagined. 7 months later, when the divorce was finally finalized, my boutique had already expanded to a second location. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Adam struggled to rebuild his life, the little shop he'd mocked was thriving. I'd hired 3 new employees and launched an online store that was rapidly gaining traction across the country. News about Adam trickled in through mutual acquaintances. He'd tried his luck on dating apps, but women his age weren't interested in a middle-aged man still living with his parents. Younger women, having heard about his past through office gossip, avoided him completely. Lauren, ironically, had become a frequent customer at my original boutique. She'd gone back to school for a business degree and started her own social media consulting firm. One day, as she tried on a designer handbag, she said, "You inspired me. You taught me that a woman can build something lasting instead of getting lost in empty promises." I smiled. I still kept Adam's cruel message framed in my office, but not as a reminder of pain, as proof of how far I'd come. I put a small plaque underneath it. Success is the best revenge. 6 years later, on the anniversary of my first boutique, I stood before my employees and loyal customers. What had started as one small shop was now the jewel of a thriving empire. Adam's mom was there. I hadn't invited her. She waited until the crowd thinned before approaching. "I saw Adam yesterday," she said, smoothing the designer dress she just purchased from my store. "He was talking about his glory days, the life he could have had." She sighed. "He still doesn't understand he didn't lose everything in the divorce. He threw it away." I thought of his text message, the casual cruelty, his arrogance in believing I would be destroyed, that I would beg, that I would break. And instead, I'd built something stronger than ever. Each new boutique was proof of what women can achieve when they stop dimming their light for insecure men. Just then, one of my new employees approached. Coincidentally, her name was also Lauren. "Can we talk about the new inventory system?" she asked. As I explained it to her, I saw my reflection in the shop window. And for the first time, I saw what Adam couldn't see 6 years ago. Not a woman aging, but a woman stronger, wiser, and more successful. His text message was meant to be the ending of my story, but really it was just the beginning. Not just for me, but for every woman who heard my story and realized she deserved better than some man's midlife crisis.